Characteristics of the Cold War by Carrie Morse. The Cold War approximately started in 1946 and ended around 1991. It involved the United States and their allies, which were the United Kingdom, France, West Germany, Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Portugal, Spain, Thailand, Pakistan, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, South Vietnam, the Philippines, Israel, Taiwan, Latin America, excluding Cuba and Nicaragua, Japan, South Africa, Malaysia, Indonesia, Somalia, and Sahara. Then there was the Soviet Union and their allies, which were Albany, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Cuba, China, North Vietnam, and North Korea. The war was basically a tension-filled competition between the United States and the Soviet Union over politics, technology, education, and culture. It was called the Cold War because there was actually no large-scale physical fighting. It was more of a war with words. The characteristics of the Cold War that better describe the competition between the U.S. and the Soviet Union are the differences in ideologies, a competition of arms, who had the better treaties and allies, military power, espionage, and the space race. The first of their differences was in ideologies. The U.S. was very pro-capitalism, which was an economic system in which investment in and ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange of wealth is made and maintained chiefly by private individuals or corporations, especially as contrasted to cooperatively or state-owned means of wealth. The Soviets were quite the opposite and very much so believed in communism, which is a system of social organization in which all economic activity is controlled by a totalitarian state dominated by a single and self-perpetuating political party. Then there was the competition of an arms race, which helped put stress and hysteria in the United States especially. The U.S. was the first to detonate the atomic bomb in 1945. Then in 1952, the U.S. tested their first H-bomb. The USSR caught up and was able to produce their first H-bomb in 1953. In 1954, a doctrine of the United States called MAD, or Mutual Assured Destruction, was put into place, basically saying if one was to attack the other, the aggressor would also have guaranteed their own destruction. Then in 1957, the USSR launched their first ICBM missile, which is a ballistic missile with a minimum range of about 3,400 miles that was designed to deliver one or more nuclear warheads. The U.S. followed shortly after with their technology of ICBM. Lastly, China, the Soviets' on and off allies, produced their H-bomb. There were several treaties that formed during the Cold War that played a big part, and they were the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in 1949 that included Belgium, Britain, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, and the United States. Then there was the ComCon in 1949 that included Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Albany, and the Soviet Union. Next was the Southeast Asia Collective Defense Treaty that included the United States, France, Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Pakistan. Lastly was the Warsaw Pact in 1955 that included the Soviet Union, Albany, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. Another important factor in the Cold War was the military power. Two proxy wars that fit into this characteristic was the Korean and the Vietnam War. The Korean War began as a civil war between North and South Korea, but the conflict soon became international when, under U.S. leadership, the United Nations joined to support South Korea, and the People's Republic of China entered to aid North Korea. The war left Korea divided and brought the Cold War to Asia. Then there was the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a long, costly, armed conflict that pitted the communist regime of North Vietnam and its southern allies known as the Viet Cong against South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States. The divisive war, increasingly unpopular at home, ended with the withdrawal of U.S. forces in 1973 and the unification of Vietnam under communist control 2 years later. More than 3 million people were killed. Espionage was very popular during the Cold War. The two main espionage agencies during this time was, for the United States, the CIA in 1947, the Centralized Intelligence Agency, and in the Soviet Union was the KGB in 1954. It was a time of spies, agents, and assassins living double lives in order to gather information and intelligence about their enemy. Another big competition between the U.S. and the Soviet Union during the Cold War was the space race. It started in 1957 with the launch of Sputnik by the Soviets. Then again in 1957, the Soviets put the first animal into space. Next, in 1961, the Soviets sent Yuri Gagarin to be the first man into space. And lastly, in 1969, the U.S. had the Apollo 11 mission that successfully had the first man land on the moon. There are many more characteristics, but I believe these were some of the main characteristics to help define what the Cold War was really about.